Hello, everyone. It is that time of the week. It's time for the Cannabis Events Talk Show, hosted by eventhi. And I am your host, Delia Carrillo. For those that are unfamiliar with eventhi is an online ticketing platform catering to the cannabis culture. We work with event hosts all throughout the United States to provide them a compliant ticketing platform to sell tickets and sponsorships for their cannabis-related events. And on this show, the Cannabis Events Talk Show, we cover all things about cannabis events, experiences, and tourism. We want to keep you updated on the hottest topics, from current event news to trends to interviews with our special guests each week, marketing tips, and so much more. Now, for those that are, again, new to the show, how it works is we bring in a special guest each week and we have a little one-on-one interview where they are providing insight and tips and just information about the fields that they're in to really drive some knowledge, again, around cannabis event, tourism, and hospitality. After that, we will dive into a article of the week, latest headline, again, around those same kind of topics, and just speak on it. Just give our point of views and thoughts on it. And then after, that'll be done with our special guests, and I'll just end the show with some general announcements. So we are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you are joining us live, feel free to let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions or commentary, we want to hear from you. Sometimes your comments even get brought onto the screen. So with that being said, I'm always so honored. I do appreciate all the amazing people that join us on our show. But I do have, a special feeling about this person. I'm really excited to have her join me today. Our special guest is Lisbeth Vargas. Lisbeth is a first-generation Mexican-American community builder and Chicago native. A marketer by training with a master's degree from Northwestern, she has successfully grown companies in the cannabis and tech industry. From academia to startup life, her work acumen stretches across growth, product scaling, operations, sales enablement, fundraising, and recruitment. In 2016, Lisbeth launched her career in cannabis as the founding director of communications for Hatch Dispensary. She developed a system for marketing cannabis brands and moved on to do consulting, gaining extensive experience in both the plant touching and ancillary side of the industry. Now, Lisbeth's cannabis network stretches across the industry and country, having worked with entrepreneurs to develop cannabis businesses. And she currently serves as the executive director of the Illinois Independent Craft Growers Association and CMO for Canna Bella Lux, a Latina-owned cannabis lifestyle brand focused on sharing weed, wellness, and wisdom with other women on a national level. So with that being said, welcome, Lisbeth. Thank you for joining me.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. As I kind of mentioned already, it has been such an amazing experience getting to know you over the past few years. And for those that are tuning in, fun fact, Lisbeth and I met virtually as she was producing a virtual event a few years ago. Can you share a bit more about that event and again, that initial vision behind the mission of what you were producing for that virtual event?
Absolutely. So Adelia and I met through a cold email in 2019. At that point, I had been in the industry for 3 years as a marketing director for a dispensary. And so I had seen the limited opportunity that a lot of folks, Latinx and Black folks in the industry had. Specifically around that time, everybody thought that the only way that you could get involved in the cannabis industry was through a dispensary job or a very specific plant touching job. And at that time, someone who had that career experience, I realized that you could really do anything that you were passionate about in cannabis. And to be honest with you, I was a little jaded of the fact that there wasn't enough minority involvement in the space. So I put together a list of people that I admired across the country, yourself included, who are already doing amazing work in the cannabis industry, and put it together for the Cash into Cannabis Summit. We had 2,500 attendees virtually over 3 days, 26 panel list, mostly women of color, which was amazing to see just so much information-free game being shown to folks and like, hey, you can do accounting, you can do marketing. And ultimately the goal was to show people that there was a different way to enter the industry in 2019.
I'm on mute. That's huge, and you did this like all by yourself, I remember, right? Like this was all you. So 2,500 people, that many panels, that many people, that was a lot you took on. And it was a success. So it was huge. It was an honor to be a part of that. You recently shared about a new position within the industry. Can you share more about that organization and what you all have in store coming up?
Absolutely. So, as someone who has been in this space here in my home state of Illinois since 2016, I've really been able to see the ins and out of the industry on the plant touching side and as well as on the ancillary and consulting side. And so, in my latest endeavor, something that I'm very passionate about is social equity and ownership for the cannabis industry, not only here in my home state, but nationally. And one of the things that really drove me to action was the fact that craft growers, for all of you that may not be aware with our state's cannabis industry, is a newly licensed type of operator. And so that was a new opportunity for different folks to get into this space. As many of you maybe know, following along, our legislation was aimed at social equity ownership and really expanding the opportunity for different folks to get into the space. And so, having seen the other side of it on the ancillary side, I was really motivated to take up the cause to expand this industry. We are a trade organization focused on the craft grow sector here in Illinois, and we're really excited about what the industry has in store. We just had a last round over the summer, last round of litigation that allowed for new license holders to come into this space. So I'm really excited about what the future has for craft grow here in Illinois. A lot of other places in the state, across the country, I've heard it called micro, so like micro growers. So we're opening up that sector in the industry here.
That is so exciting. I can't wait to see it continue to evolve and grow and learn more, about as you continue to help them and you all evolve the organization. And it really does. It sounds like an amazing organization and opportunity. I believe I saw, but do you have any upcoming events happening that you can share about?
Yeah, so I wanted to kick off a webinar series. I think one of the things that is very important when it comes to community building, and we'll talk more about that, but is creating the space to get to know one another and to build off the resources that we have. So I am kicking off a fireside chat series. First up with me, we'll talk about the future of craft growers, some 2023 predictions, and really kick off our series of showing folks more information about the industry as well as what we do as an association.
And what day is that going to be on?
That's next Wednesday, October 12th, 6 p.m.
Perfect. And if anybody's interested, I did see it's on Event High, so feel free to RSVP via there as well. We do have a comment from the audience from Ilantha. She states that you are a key player and pioneer in the Chicago cannabis scene. Amazing work and amazing person. So,
we love Alante. Thank you.
Now, the other organization or business that you are part of is Canna Bella Lux. And you ladies, you and Tiffany recently hosted a retreat in collaboration with IICGA. How was that event? What was the feeling? What is one thing you even learned about producing a retreat?
I think one of my favorite things about my partnership with Tiffany, shout out Tiffany, has been the idea of creating spaces and events and experiences that we are seeking out. So as you know, especially in the cannabis industry, women have dropped when it comes to executive leadership positions, ownership. Less than 2% of funding goes to women. And so what we really wanted to focus on was creating this space for women in the cannabis industry to get professional development while also relaxing in this beautiful desert oasis. The idea came about from, we go to these industry events and sometimes the women just kind of huddle together or we seek each other out to facilitate a different experience. Why don't we put all these women in one place? And IICGA, our partnership with IICGA, the Cannabis Yogi, came about this idea that why do we have to grind ourselves to salt? Why can't we be executive, successful leaders in the space that also have the room to grow professionally, but also nurture that wellness? So she put together this amazing curriculum over 4 days for the retreat, where we did, vision boarding as well as mini sound healing sessions, yoga, nutritional workshops, just talking about different ways that we can power ourselves in the industry as we grow professionally.
I keep doing it. I keep muting myself. I saw the photos. It looked amazing. Like just, it definitely, that's something that I could, I think I shared this with you. We need that to where somebody like me who feels guilty taking time off. But if I know that I'm learning something that can help me as a human, which then also helps the business down the road in some other way. And then obviously to the relaxing, like I don't shut off. I know that, but it is something that is appealing to someone like me who, does get that work guilt.
You know what? It's hard. It's very hard. And as someone, we've been in this industry for just as long. I think one of the things that people don't realize that it's flashy, it's fun, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot of behind the scenes. It's a lot of long hours. And there's a lot of gray area when it comes to structure, right? A lot of startup life, as you know, go, go, go. And so what really inspired me too is like, we need to start carving out spaces for ourselves within the industry. As I mentioned before, sometimes you flock to be the only other woman in the event. Why don't we create center focus events that allow for women to just be themselves? And the exciting thing was that we had mostly women, mostly Black-owned, vet-owned sponsors from California who really saw the vision. Shout out Fruits Lab, shout out Rogue Pack, my bud base, Broccoli Magazine, who like really stepped up. Willow, we love Willow out in LA, who really saw that vision of creating that space. And I think that's the other key part of event and community is aligning with other organizations who see the vision.
Yeah, such a good point. What was one thing that you learned from, producing a retreat to that size?
I think it's like focusing in on what you want the experience to be and go with the flow as stuff comes up. As you know, day of run of show operational things, there's always hiccups, but instead of focusing on what we're not doing, creating that and facilitating the, I like to say the more easygoing side of operations. I love Tiffany because she's the yin to my yang. I'm the Virgo, like, hey, it's 2:15, we have 2:30. And she's the easygoing Leo that's like, we're just vibing, we'll move on to the next activity. So I think it's allowing yourself to remove the expectation of that strict structure, but creating a fun experience.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, going into kind of the future with Canna Bella Lux, you both are producing a beautiful experience during Cannabis Week in Las Vegas. I know Tiffany joined us a few weeks ago and shared a little bit about the event. But for those who are tuning in for the first time, can you kind of give us a recap and what are you most excited about?
So we are hosting the Canna Bella Oasis over MJ BizCon week. We have facilitated a beautiful villa experience alongside IICGA again, where we'll curate over 4 days wellness, different workshops, professional development, some mentoring opportunity, spaces to take meetings, spaces to network, and it really is focused on women and wellness and weed. And so while the space is catered to women, men are obviously welcomed, but we have partnered with This Is Jane on a donation experience where we're able to donate ticket sales through people who attend the 4-day event.
And that is during MJ BizCon week. Do you have the dates kind of finalized?
Yes, we do. It's officially the dates are November 16th through the 18th, and we have some pre-party November 15th. But ultimately, the goal is to facilitate an experience alongside MJ BizCon. We know it's so hectic, it's so big, it's such a rich experience, but also having like a safe space where you can go network, and we'll have events sprinkled out throughout those 4 days that complement MJ Biz, so you don't have to worry about missing certain panels or missing things that are related to the week. Versus it's a more after the event, different experiences that will facilitate. Ultimately, I think it's to what we've been seeking out is when we go to these events, there isn't spaces that are catered to women that allow us to be our full selves while also the realism of like we have to get work done. There's all these different things that need to happen. And we're really excited about putting this event together because there hadn't been anybody else in the space doing it. And like I said, Tiffany, I always think about like, what do we want to experience? What do we want to see happen? So we brought about this retreat.
That's going to be so fun. It's going to, yeah, I'm excited to stop by during MJ BizCon week. And you're right. It is something that is needed for us. It is that safe space where, we can just be ourselves and be a breath of fresh air after coming off of the show floor. Now, I want to go more into a little bit of just advice and insight that you can share. Now, you are behind many different types of events and organizations. Each of these are catering to a different audience. Why is it important for event organizers to understand their audience?
I think I keep bringing it back to this idea of the experience. When operationally, I think a lot of people, especially during COVID, jumped to events because it was one of the quickest ways to connect with folks at a different level than the regular, experience that you had before everything shut down. And so while we're living in a world where you have to accommodate to different expectations when it comes to events, I think the importance is understanding who your event is not for. And oftentimes when we create these expectations, we want to serve everyone, right? We want to invite everyone, we want to include everyone. But the fact of the matter is that with anything, and especially in branding, there are people that are just going to self-select out. There are people who don't like women well in weed. They don't like women wellness and weed, and that's okay. But I think when it comes to creating a community around events and meeting those expectations of we are trying to have a great experience, right? We're going after the same thing. Specifically in the cannabis space, the user is not a monolith. There's so many kinds of users. Every day there's a new type of user that's exploring the industry. And so being able to narrow down who you're trying to reach, the experience that you're trying to cater for them is so crucial, because I think oftentimes when we live in a capitalist society, right? You're trying to make money off of an event. You lose sight of what the purpose of it is, right? Is it because I want to bring my members together? Is it a, educational workshop? Is it a mixer? There's been so many different kinds of events, right? Is it more like professional and structured or easygoing? And so I think knowing who you're catering it to allows for that expectation. And for me, word of mouth is so important. So the last thing that you want to hear is all this negative feedback about your event from someone who the event was not for.
Yeah, that's so true. That's a good point. And one last question before we move into the article. What is your best piece of advice that you would share with event organizers out there looking? And I know you kind of, maybe even what you just said also goes to that, but is there any other advice that you would share with someone looking to host an event?
I would say the success is in the pre-planning. So it goes alongside my previous comment, right? You have to plan and then plan to not plan, right? So have the things that are expected to be an obstacle. One of the biggest things too for me has been run of shows, which you're amazing at. One pager, this is exactly how it's going to break about. It might not be specific, right? You might have to have that wiggle room, but there's at least this roadmap, creating a roadmap of what to expect. It's very important who your ticketing platform is, how are you getting communications out and reminders for the event, how people are accessing their tickets, how you get folks to talk about the event. So what are collateral or marketing materials that you're creating so people can facilitate that conversation? One of my biggest advice would be to think through your event from start to finish before you're even proposing it or even pitching it or going after it. Location is always key. If it's in person, how close it is to different things, how safe people feel, how accessible. I personally, especially early on days of networking, relied heavily on public transportation. So are you taking all these different things into consideration?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. Well, we went through those questions and there was just so much information and value. And, thank you for sharing that. We have one more thing we're going to go over, which is our article of the week. So I'm going to read you a little bit of a snippet and we can just chat about it. Some of these articles are not really opinion based. It's just more about what's happening in the industry. But this one is Canna Jam. Canna Jam Festival returns to, and I don't know how to say this, Silante with music, munchies, and of course, cannabis. This is in Ann Arbor. So cannabis lovers are going to soon have the chance to attend a cannabis-filled event paired with live music, food vendors, and more at Canna Jam. This is actually a state-sanctioned cannabis consumption festival. This is the second time it's returning. And the organizer, Michael Coman, is actually an attorney whose firm works in cannabis licensing. So he said events like Canna Jam help pave the way for cannabis use at different social events. The event, he broke it down a little bit of the event for those are for 21 and older. They're selling tickets online. And at the gate, their attendees are allowed to bring and consume their own cannabis, but alcohol sales and use will actually be prohibited at this event, which is awesome to see. The state licensed event will feature cannabis sales provided by Arborside, Sticky Ipsy, Bloom City Club, and more. He also has a lineup of performances, and what it sounds like is, they're definitely going for a blues, classic rock, kind of reggae, like a music festival, definitely. So then I just wanted to end with, he's actually anticipating a big turnout for the festival this this year. The last year they sold about 2,300 tickets. He's looking at 3,500 to 4,000, which is a huge jump. And he just says that he wants Canna Jam to become a recognized event that people will look forward to every year. What are your thoughts on these kind of music festivals or just festivals in general that are incorporating cannabis consumption? What is your thoughts on like the approach with it? He's offering food vendors, no alcohol with the cannabis. Like, what do you like about all that?
While I'm never in the camp of telling people what to do, I do think that it's very smart to no liquor. One of the biggest things for me, especially when you're introducing people who may not be consumers, so this is a larger open type of event, I think it gets conflated. And there have been events in the past, specifically even here that we've attended, where liquor does get involved and then people just get crossfaded, right, as you would for someone who may not be experienced to consuming both. So the fact that they have thought this out is what excites me. Like, hey, we know that this might be an issue. I want to live in a world where there are fairs like that. Open public consumption is a whole other conversation that a lot of people have, right? Whether you're against or oppose it. I mean, people, if you want to equate it to liquor, you can't just, in many places, you can't just walk around with an open can of liquor, right? And so I think having it more controlled and being very structured in the way that like, hey, we're going to limit this and have it be more about experience is what excites me. The turnout, that sounds like a lot, like 5,000, and virtually is one thing, but like in one, like when you think of like in-person events, security. The other thing too that I talk about with consumption events, and I think they should go hand in hand more, is like we should have more CBD on hand. If there is that one-off chance, and again, like I think we're talking about, what is it, arbitrary data when it comes to like overconsumption at events, but I think it's important to address it because it's one of the things that people always talk about, right? Oh, well, everyone's going to get super high and get hurt, all these accidents. No, I think it should be the expectation, like very much you would any wine festival or beer festival, where when you have like, maybe not to that extreme, like, the medics on the side, there should be a CBD tent, walk over, if you feel like you've had a little too much. But I'm all for it. I want to live in a world where this, especially here in Chicago, we have a ton of outdoor festivals, music festivals. We have a jazz festival as well. I can't wait for those two to merge.
Yeah, that would be exciting. Yeah, and you're really, that is a great point on the CBD and water. That should just be hand in hand for sure. Like everywhere, easy, accessible for anyone, especially at a capacity that size for sure. Well, that brings us to the end of the segment. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we let you go, how can our viewers connect with you or learn more?
So I am a big fan of LinkedIn. So add me on LinkedIn. I think it's a great resource for cannabis networking, but also cannabis community. And it's one of the less sanctioned platforms. So I do enjoy LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram, the Canna Marketer, where I'm also sharing more information. And then you can visit our website, the Canna Bella Lux, cannabellalux.com and illinoiscraftgrower.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. And always a great conversation. And I will see you in a few weeks in Vegas.
I can't wait. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Pa'lante, mi gente.
Well, thank you all for tuning in today. That was just always a great conversation with her. And I'm so glad that you all were able to learn some amazing advice. Now, just a few announcements before we go. So next week's guest is Bob Culkin of the Cannabis Career Institute. The Cannabis Career Institute is an innovator in the field of cannabis schools. They originated in March of 2009, which was the first cannabis business training seminars held nationally. And with more of a focus on business techniques, the Cannabis Career Institute has set the trend by creating a step-by-step method of doing business and providing it on a silver platter for students. And this week's event of the week is Dia de las Chifas. Dia de las Chifas wants to let you all know that you're invited to attend their second annual Dia de las Chifas event taking place in the heart of LA at the newly renovated Hazy LA studio. They are thrilled to make this their first ever co-ed event, and it's going to be all about the Halloween season fun. They want to bring people together to meet, learn about new resources, and of course, support women in weed. They also ask, come dressed up in your best costume and enter to win a raffle to a grand prize. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to eventhi and look for Dia de las Chifas. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us. Join us next week. And if you want to watch the replay button, this is going to be replayed again on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So stay safe, stay healthy, and stay high.